Red Bull arrived in Australia with an aggressive plan. 17 updates to regain dominance, but something isn't working. Could this start to the season jeopardize Max Verstappen's reign? Stay until the end because we'll analyze every change and its impact on the title fight. Today you'll discover why McLaren and Ferrari are taking the lead, and what Red Bull can do to avoid an uphill season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Red Bull can turn this situation around? Red Bull entered the 2025 season in an unexpected position. After dominating Formula One for years, pre-season testing in Bahrain revealed that the RB21 was not the fastest car on the grid. In a surprising turn of events, McLaren and Ferrari showed superior pace, leaving Red Bull with many questions and the urgency to react before the Australian Grand Prix. During testing in Bahrain, the RB21's performance was below expectations. Max Verstappen completed several long runs with higher than usual degradation, causing concern for the team. Meanwhile, Lawson, who took over as second driver following the departure of Sergio Perez, struggled to match the times of his direct competitors. Engineers detected that the car was experiencing balance issues in various corner phases. It suffered from understeer in high-speed corners and lost traction, and the car's aerodynamics were also significantly affected by the acceleration from slow corners, a problem that had not been observed to the same extent in previous seasons. One of the most critical points detected in pre-season was the lack of stability at the rear of the car. During the 2024 season, Red Bull had relied on an aerodynamic concept based on high straight-line efficiency without sacrificing too much downforce in corners. However, with the evolution of the regulations and improvements introduced by other teams, this advantage was considerably reduced. Ferrari and McLaren in particular managed to optimize their aerodynamic packages with configurations that generated more grip without increasing drag, resulting in better lap times. Another factor that concerned Red Bull engineers was the correlation between wind tunnel data and actual on-track performance. During pre-season, the team hoped that the aerodynamic adjustments to the RB21 would deliver a performance increase similar to that achieved in previous years. However, initial analyses indicated that some of the changes introduced were not working as expected. Pierre Wache, Red Bull's technical director, mentioned that the car exhibited inconsistencies in its behavior, making it difficult to find an optimal setup in different track conditions. In addition to performance issues, Red Bull also had to deal with budget caps and development restrictions imposed on teams finishing at the top of the championship. As the reigning Constructors' champion, the team had less time in the wind tunnel and CFD simulations compared to its closest rivals. This factor has been decisive in the car's ability to evolve, as other teams have been able to take advantage of more aerodynamic development time to close the gap with Red Bull. Faced with this situation, the team made the decision to introduce a massive package of 17 updates for the first race in Australia. The objective was clear: to correct the problems detected in Bahrain and regain the level of competitiveness that had made them the benchmark on the grid in recent years. However, the magnitude of these changes raised another concern: the possibility that the team wouldn't have enough time to fully understand the new aerodynamic package before qualifying in Melbourne. The pressure on Red Bull ahead of the Australian Grand Prix was evident. With Verstappen seeking his fifth world title and Lawson facing his first full season with the team, uncertainty about the RB21's performance was a central topic in the paddock. While McLaren and Ferrari headed into the first race of the year with confidence, Red Bull faced an unfamiliar situation. They were no longer the undisputed favorites. Red Bull made a radical decision ahead of the Australian Grand Prix by introducing 17 updates to the RB21. This package of improvements, one of the most extensive implemented by the team in recent years, covers almost all critical areas of the car. The urgency of these modifications arose after pre-season testing in Bahrain revealed that the RB21 lacked the pace necessary to challenge McLaren and Ferrari for victory. The team needed to find immediate solutions to close the gap on its rivals and avoid starting the season at a disadvantage. The updates have been designed to improve aerodynamic efficiency, optimize engine cooling, and correct the balance issues identified in Bahrain. Red Bull engineers have worked intensively to develop and test these parts in record time, confident that each will provide a key benefit to the car's performance. One of the most significant changes is to the front wing. Red Bull has introduced a completely new design with a wider structure and a different curvature of the aerodynamic wings. This modification aims to improve airflow control to the sides of the car, optimizing the performance of the floor and diffuser. In addition, the car's nose has been redesigned with a more rounded profile and a different connection between the wing elements, allowing for greater downforce generation without increasing drag on straight lines. The front suspension has also been revised in an attempt to improve corner entry stability and reduce tire wear. During preseason testing, Red Bull experienced issues with weight transfer in high-speed corners, which affected grip at the front of the car. To address this, the suspension arm angles and steering geometry have been adjusted, aiming for improved cornering response. One of the most critical changes is to the car's floor. In the ground effect era, this component is the most important for generating efficient downforce. Red Bull has redesigned the aerodynamic floor vents to improve airflow channeling toward the venturi channels, allowing for more downforce without compromising stability. Adjustments have also been made to the floor edges to minimize efficiency losses when the car goes over curbs or uneven surfaces. The car's cooling system has also been a focus of improvement. New cooling louvers have been introduced in the side pods to optimize heat dissipation from the engine and electrical components. The configuration of these elements is key to maintaining the ideal operating temperature of the engine without generating turbulence that impairs the car's aerodynamic efficiency. At the rear of the car, Red Bull has made modifications to the rear suspension and the beam wing, the small wing located below the main rear wing. These changes aim to improve stability in medium and low-speed corners, where the RB21 has shown certain deficiencies compared to its rivals. In addition, the rear wing has been optimized with a new curvature on the side plates, allowing for better airflow management at the rear axle and greater efficiency in downforce generation. The RB21's diffuser has also undergone significant modifications. Red Bull has adopted a tapered design at the end of the diffuser, similar to the solutions used by Ferrari and Mercedes last season. This configuration reduces the risk of aerodynamic instability in slow corners, an issue that plagued the RB20 at certain circuits in 2024. The new design helps stabilize downforce in varying track conditions and improves the car's handling in technical sections. Each of these modifications has been developed with the intention of recovering the performance lost in Bahrain and returning Red Bull to the fight for victories. However, the large number of changes introduces a new challenge. The team needs to quickly understand how these updates perform under race conditions. With only a few practice sessions left before qualifying, setup optimization will be key to determining whether these improvements can make a real difference to the RB21's performance. Expectations surrounding Red Bull's 17-piece upgrade package were high before the start of the Australian Grand Prix. The team was confident that the changes implemented on the RB21 would allow it to regain the lead it lost over McLaren and Ferrari following preseason testing. However, the initial on-track results have left more doubts than certainties. During the first free practice session at Albert Park, Max Verstappen managed to finish in 5th place, 0.4 of a second behind Lando Norris's McLaren, who set the fastest time. Although the gap didn't seem alarming at first glance, analysis of the RB21's pace on long runs showed worrying signs. Verstappen reported issues with the car's overall grip, mentioning that the rear end felt unstable in medium-speed corners and that the corner exit response wasn't what he expected. In the second session, the situation worsened slightly. Verstappen dropped to 7th, this time more than 0.6 behind Charles Leclerc's Ferrari, who dominated the timesheets. Beyond qualifying position, the main problem for Red Bull was the lack of consistency in the car's behavior. Engineers analyzed the data and found that the RB21 struggled to generate the expected downforce in certain phases of the lap, which compromised the driver's confidence. Liam Lawson's case was even more complicated. In his first official outing as a regular driver for the team, Lawson finished 16th in the first session and 17th in the second, more than 1.5 seconds off the fastest time. This performance was partly due to the New Zealand driver's lack of experience on the Albert Park circuit, but it also showed that the car wasn't performing as expected. Unlike Verstappen, who was able to maintain a competitive pace in certain sections, Lawson struggled to find the right balance in the car, leading him to make several corrections throughout his fast laps. Statements within the team reflected frustration with the results. Helmut Marko was clear in acknowledging that Red Bull was not in a position to challenge for victory in Australia with the level of performance shown in practice. According to his analysis, the team was between 2 and 3/10 behind the leaders, meaning that, under normal conditions, a podium finish would be the best result they could hope for. He also noted that the team was confident in the possibility of rainy conditions on race day, which could play in Verstappen's favor given his abilities in the wet. For his part, Verstappen displayed a realistic stance regarding the team's situation. In his statements, he hinted that the issues detected during the Bahrain tests had not been completely resolved with the new updates. He explained that, although the car's balance wasn't completely unstable, the overall lack of grip made it difficult to find the car's limits. Unlike in previous years, where Red Bull had a solid foundation and only needed to make minor adjustments, this time they were faced with a car that required a more in-depth solution to be competitive. The team's technical director, Pierre Wache, also acknowledged that the improvements hadn't had the expected impact. He explained that some of the changes introduced in the upgrade package had improved certain aspects of performance, but others had created new problems. Wache mentioned that the car wasn't responding as they had anticipated and that the correlation between simulator data and on-track performance wasn't ideal. One of the most striking points of the weekend was the performance of Racing Bull's, Red Bull's sister team. Both Yuki Tsunoda and rookie Isaac Hadjar achieved competitive times in the second practice session, even finishing ahead of Verstappen. This result raised eyebrows in the paddock, as Racing Bulls uses many Red Bull components, including the rear suspension and gearbox. Although Helmut Marko attempted to justify the performance difference by arguing that Racing Bulls was using a more aggressive power unit setup, several analysts were skeptical of this explanation. Sky Sports F1 pundit Karan Chandok was one of the first to point out that the performance gap between the two teams could indicate that Racing Bulls had managed to find a more effective setup for its car. While Verstappen and Lawson struggled to extract performance from the RB21, Tsunoda and Hadjar seemed much more comfortable with their cars, raising questions about whether Red Bull had taken the right direction in its development. The comparison with Ferrari and McLaren was also unfavorable for Red Bull. Ferrari showed solid pace from the first session, with Leclerc and Sainz setting competitive times on different fuel configurations. The Italian team fielded an optimized version of the SF25 with suspension and engine fairing upgrades, managing to extract more performance from the aerodynamic package without compromising the car's stability. McLaren, meanwhile, brought a new front wing and beam wing assembly, allowing them to improve their aerodynamic efficiency on fast straights and corners. Both teams demonstrated they had maximized their development potential in pre-season, while Red Bull was still searching for answers. The team now faces a significant dilemma. With only one free practice session before qualifying, the room for maneuver to make adjustments is extremely limited. The priority will be to find a setup that allows Verstappen to extract the maximum possible performance in qualifying, but the options for improving the car in such a short time are limited. The first impressions of the weekend have generated uncertainty within Red Bull. While the season is just beginning and the team has demonstrated its ability to evolve quickly in the past, the fact that the 17 updates have not produced the expected results raises questions about the direction of the RB21's development. In a championship where every point counts, starting the season with a performance deficit could jeopardize Verstappen's and the team's title aspirations in the Constructors' Championship. The 2025 Australian Grand Prix marked an unexpected start for Red Bull. After years of absolute dominance, the team has faced its first major technical challenge in a long time. The decision to introduce 17 updates to the RB21 reflected the urgency to regain the competitive level lost in preseason testing, but the results of the first practice sessions have left more questions than answers. Analysis of on-track performance shows that the modifications implemented have not had the expected impact. Despite adjustments to the front wing, suspension, floor, and diffuser, the RB21 continues to suffer from grip and stability issues in certain phases of the lap. Verstappen has demonstrated his ability to adapt to adverse situations in the past, but even his talent has not been enough to compensate for the car's shortcomings in the most critical sections of the Albert Park circuit. The situation is even more complex when considering the progress of direct rivals. Ferrari and McLaren have managed to optimize their aerodynamic packages without needing to make changes as drastic as those of Red Bull. This suggests that, while other teams have progressively evolved their concepts, Red Bull may have taken a development direction that is not yet fully understood. Racing Bull's superior performance in practice sessions also raises questions about whether the main team has made the right choices in terms of setup and design. The lack of correlation between wind tunnel data and actual on-track behavior is another area of concern for the technical team. If the aerodynamic solutions are not performing as expected, Red Bull could face a prolonged period of fine-tuning before finding a truly competitive setup. The problem does not appear to be limited to a balance issue, but rather the car's ability to consistently generate downforce in different track conditions. With qualifying and the race still ahead, the team has little room to make significant corrections. Setup strategies for qualifying will be key to maximizing the RB21's performance, but long-run pace will be a determining factor in the race. Should the gap to Ferrari and McLaren not be closed immediately, weather conditions could be the only factor working in Red Bull's favor, especially if rain enters the scene and Verstappen can take advantage of his talent in low-grip conditions. The start of the 2025 season poses a major unknown about Red Bull's future. If the team can find quick solutions to the current problems, it could still recover and return to the fight for victory in the upcoming races. However, if the difficulties persist, the team will be forced to rethink its development approach, which could compromise its performance in the early part of the championship. The performance in Australia could be an indication of how the season will unfold. If Red Bull fails to reverse this situation, the title fight could become much closer than expected. The question now is whether the team will be able to react in time to defend its position as the leader on the grid. This weekend's analysis leaves many questions open. The performance of the RB21 in the upcoming races will be crucial in defining the championship outlook. Now is the time to listen to other perspectives. Do you think Red Bull will be able to solve its problems before qualifying? Or are we witnessing the start of a season in which Ferrari and McLaren will take the lead? The conversation continues in the comments.